Hey guys, my name's Wyatt McLeod. Today on the channel we're going to be starting a new series called Runner Profile. We figured that this would be a good way to get you guys to know the people on the team a little more, and it's essentially just going to be a short interview talking to people about their story for running. And so yeah, today we got Sean Heaton to start off this series.
I'm Sean Heaton. I'm a redshirt senior, or a fifth-year senior. I'm from Maple Grove, Minnesota, and my majors are business and biology. I actually particularly am fond of my own running story. I feel like it's pretty different than the way I hear most people have approached the sport of running, or at least come to the sport of running. So when I was in 7th grade, I was going into 7th grade, my father asked me if I wanted to join the cross country team because I was joining middle school. The way our school system worked is we went to middle school in 7th grade, not 6th grade. So I was joining a new school, joining new things, and my dad thought that joining a club might be a good option. And to preface that, I for years had done rec soccer and baseball leagues and all things under the sun that my parents had decided to sign me up for, and I was bad at all of them. I mean, and I was a quitter, and I didn't really enjoy any of these things, and I just always kind of felt left out. I struggled with asthma when I was a kid, and it was hard to breathe when I did things, and I'd have asthma attacks, and I was also very afraid of the inhaler, so I wouldn't take the inhaler, so I really just struggled with being athletic and being out there. And like I said, I was kind of a quitter, never really made it in any sport for more than a couple years. So 7th grade rolled around, and my dad asked if I wanted to join the cross country team, and I said no. And he brought me to the meeting, and I saw all the people in the room, and I was scared out of my mind, so I did not join the cross country team that year. And my dad and mom had both been runners, and not necessarily in school or collegiately, but they were runners in their adult life and did marathons. And my dad was an Ironman, a 4-time Ironman, so definitely very active people, and tried to get me into it. My grandpa was a runner, and my uncle's a runner, and my aunt's a runner. I just, it's in the family, but not necessarily at the high school or the collegiate level. And so my dad, the next year, insisted to bring me to the cross-country meeting again, and for some reason I said yes to going along with him again, even though I had such a bad experience of anxiety and fear the last year. And since then I really hadn't become any more athletic, and for some reason I decided to join the cross-country team that year. I didn't know anyone on the team, I didn't know much about anything about running, but really it escapes me why I joined the team, and I did. And immediately I fell in love with the sport, just being in it every day and getting to practice and being able to run with people. I met a lot of people that I'd never known, and 8th grade I think was definitely the first time that I had more than 2 friends, 2 or 3 friends. Before that I kind of just had a very small group of friends that I talked to at school, and after that I kind of really started branching out. I started talking to people, I started hanging out with people outside of school, I started being a lot more involved in school, and it kind of gave me a reason to love school itself too. I never really liked school before that, and I feel like it just really got me engaged into the community of our school and really enjoying it. So that's kind of how I got into running, and so it's really all because of my dad, and for some reason I ended up saying yes to the sport. Running I think is really cool because it's a pretty deep sport. On the outside looking in, it's pretty simple, there's not much to it. But I think a lot of people approach running in different ways, and a lot of people like running for different reasons. And for me, it's always been the training. It's always been easy runs and long runs. They're just what I live for. I've always, like I said before, being a pretty bad athlete as a child and having asthma, which did end up going away luckily. I've never dealt with that since I started running. But just being so bad at competitive sports, I hated racing, and honestly didn't really start liking racing until maybe halfway through college. And so I never liked really racing. I got too nervous for racing. It was really scary, and I wasn't finding a ton of success in that field. But getting out every day after school and just running miles and miles with my friends and talking to them, that's just by far the best thing about running. And I do enjoy a couple runs on my own once in a while, but in reality the best thing is getting out with a team and running with 5, 6, 7 guys on a nice sunny day or a rainy day or a windy day or a cold day, and just putting in the easy the miles, that just waking up the next morning being sore and kind of slogging through the day because you don't have any energy left. That's kind of where I've always found love in running. It's pretty tough because I feel like my favorite events have changed throughout the years, but I've always loved cross country, and that's really where my love started for the sport. Especially kind of being able to, as a younger kid, you know, kind of bury myself in the results and being able to see like more personal progression. Whereas track, I always felt like there's smaller races, so I kind of felt like, you know, it's harder to see success or progression because you might be focused a little more on wins and losses. So cross country is where like my heart really lies, and but over the past couple of years, track has really grown on me more and more and more, and that's mainly because of the steeplechase in college. I've really enjoyed the event. I love the fact that the event has kind of a secondary like specialty in it. It's not just about running. It's not just about you know, that smooth motion. You really have to add some skill into it. Not to say that other running events don't take skill, but you have to, you know, a movement, a flexibility, a motion that you have to really get down. And I think it's really a huge challenge to continue to keep your form at the end of a race when you're tired, and that's kind of where you can find advantage. So I like the steeplechase because it really gives you a chance to get incremental advantage over a longer, you know, like a 9-minute race, where you can slowly, you know, wear people down, and where you're going to get the advantage in the end of the race is the fact that you might be able to consistently have good form throughout the whole race over the hurdles, where other people might be wavering towards the end of the race. So I've always liked the steeplechase kind of for that added grit, that added like that added mental capacity. You kind of have to be really focused throughout the whole race to you know, be attacking those barriers. And it's just a fun event, and I think, you know, most people find it interesting to watch because most people have never heard of it. So I was really excited in high school when I heard about the event, and so that's been my favorite event in college. No, definitely my favorite carb loading meal is Wednesdays and Saturday nights at the Commons. Occasionally they will have lasagna, and it is the best meal, specifically the Commons lasagna. My favorite pair of running shoes was the Kinvara 6. I only had one pair of them. It was the first pair of Kinvaras I ever had, and they shortly moved to the Kinvara 7, which was a much different shoe model. And back then I wasn't doing quite as much mileage, so my knees could handle the Kinvara 6. I remember one run that I did in them in the summer. I forgot to bring socks after work, so I ran barefoot in my Kinvaras, and I felt in tune with nature. But it was such a low-profile shoe, really lightweight, and I felt like it really hugged my foot really well. But yeah, like I had a bunch of pairs of Kinvara 7s after that, and I love those too, but it just, you know, miles and miles and miles, my knees couldn't keep up with them. But definitely my favorite shoe. My favorite spike, it's a little tougher. I've gone through quite a few pairs of spikes. For cross country, it's the Carrera 3s that I got this last year. I think that was the first time I ever had a real cross country spike that I loved. But the spike that I probably have the most PRs in is the Victory. Either I had the Victory Elites, and now I have the big 3s, and love them. Well, I feel like from every race I take away something different. But if I had to pick one off the top of my head, it would be regionals, cross country this past year, so 2017. It was down in Kearney, Nebraska, and it was 10K. And that was my first cross country 10K. I had run one 10K previous to that on the track, but it hadn't been quite a good race. It was a pretty hot day, and that was my introduction to the 10K. But my first cross country 10K, Kearney, Nebraska. It's definitely the hardest race I've ever run, and it was just hilly, and it was as fast as regionals, and it was my first time on that stage. It was probably the biggest race of my life up to that point, and went out hard with the team, and about 4K came around, and it was just like I hit the wall, and the pain train started rolling, and I remember from 4K to 10K, I thought like that I had just like blown up, or like I didn't know what had happened. I was seriously like dazed. I didn't know where I was, and I had like a really solid finish to that race, and I remember like crossing the line and just having like a sense of pride and a sense of like accomplishment in what we did, and that was like probably the most solid team race that I've ever been part of. And looking back on the results, I had actually done fairly well, and I placed pretty well. I had no idea that I was in the all-regional spots. I just kind of assumed, since I was in so much pain, that there was no way I could have been putting together a good race. But I think it was a good lesson of the reality that there's not races where you feel perfect and run perfect. There's some races where you might feel better than other races and you're running pretty fast, but that was the time where I really had just gone to the well. I'm very proud of that. I think an interesting point, I think to prove that I'd really gone to the well, a couple days after that, I had to drop out of a workout. So it was 3 days later. I had to drop out of a workout because my calf, I strained my calf. Just I hadn't given myself enough time to recover from the race because I just put my body through too much. So I really think I was pretty close to blowing up entirely in that race. So I think that's pretty good evidence that it was one of my best races. Yeah, I didn't used to have any race superstitions, but I've developed some over the last couple of years. Like I said earlier, I used to be really burdened with stress and anxiety before races. I didn't know if I was going to be able to put myself through any sort of pain, and I was having really trouble hyping myself up and finding peace before races. So over the last couple of years, as I've started to find more and more success in my racing and not just in my running, I've developed a lot of habits. And I don't know if they're necessarily superstitions, but I feel like the habits, they really give me the ability to get in the same spot before every race. So be able to consistently be in the same state of mind, the same state of body right before a race starts. And so what I do before races is if we drive down the night before or the day of, I always have a book with me. I get a lot of reading done on trips, and I usually listen to music while I read, just because we're usually in a van or we're at a meet and it's kind of noisy, and I struggle to focus on reading like that. So I tend to listen to instrumental music, kind of just Spotify playlists like Mozart or that kind of stuff. So I'll throw that on and I'll just read books the whole night before and the morning of. And other than that, I've just really found a good meal to have before my races. So I usually do oatmeal, bananas, peanut butter, maybe some bagels. Kind of depends. I've really grown fond of Holiday Inn Express continental breakfasts. And if anything, my largest superstition would be that since I've started drinking coffee, I like to drink coffee before my races. But I feel I tend to race a lot better when it's really, really, really crappy hotel coffee. The better the coffee I have the morning before my race, the worse my race is. That's a really good question. I'm always looking for more running media to consume and more articles to read, more videos to watch, more podcasts to listen to. And so right now, what really gets me jacked up about running is ultra running, and it's something that I've never done myself, and I've never been anywhere close to. The longest race I've ever run is 6 miles. But there's more and more podcasts that I've listened to and more YouTube videos that I can find online where these documentaries of these ultra runners, and the Western States is coming up pretty soon here, so it just gets me super hyped to listen to these narratives. And it's because these runners, I feel from what we talked about earlier when we talked about me, my favorite part of running being the training, and that's where my love for running really comes. I feel and I said there's so many different angles that runners come at the sport at, especially at the collegiate level. Some people are really competitive and they just want to get their competitive edge out, or some people are really good runners and they just find success in it, so that's what they want to chase after. And some people are in it for the friends, and some people, and these are all good reasons, and they're all great reasons to come at the sport, but where I come from at it is just I feel a deep connection with the training and a deep love for just getting out there every day. And I feel in ultra running versus collegiate running, people just seem to be, from the way I can tell, all of one mindset, and they just love running. And all of them would probably say that they would give up racing in a heartbeat if they couldn't train every day. That's all there is to it. It's just running and getting out there and putting your shoes on and getting out the door and just being out there forever and connecting with nature and seeing the world and traveling and meeting the friends and having dinner with your teammates, your friends the night before, seeing people you haven't seen before, connecting on a deeper level, and I feel that just gets me hyped about running. It's this just crazy sect of runners that just love it with all their heart. Right now, in my free time, I really enjoy reading a book, drinking a cup of coffee. I feel that's a little busy right now, so that's kind of what I find time to do. Is I like to sit aside, kind of seclude myself from other people and all the noise, and just read a book and learn about something I don't know anything about.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean Heaton, for the interview. Wonderful getting to know you a little better. So,
hope you guys enjoy the page.